Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. What is the importance of operational technology, cybersecurity, and technological advancement? By our speaker, Mirel Sehic. I'm Richa, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, I like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen-only mode and will last for an hour, out of which last 10 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar to organizer and our speaker, please post your query in the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio-video challenges, please check your internet connections or you may log out and log in again. An important announcement for certificate of attendance. Participant needs to attend the complete webinar to qualify for the certificate of attendance. Participant should fill in the survey form in the attendee's thank you email and answer the 3 questions based on the webinar provided with the right answers within the same day. If these 2 criteria are met, then only the participant will receive the certificate of attendance within 5 to 7 working days after the event. About our speaker, Mirel Sehic is the Global Director of Cybersecurity for Honeywell Building Technologies. Mirel has global experience working with engineering, operations, solution engineering, and sales team across various major hazard facilities as well as critical infrastructure. Mirel is dedicated to addressing challenges and driving new growth opportunities, capabilities, and efficiencies. Mirel promotes best practice excellence, ensuring productivity and performance improvement, integrating digital operations, ICT, and cybersecurity. Mirel is based out of Atlanta, USA, and holds a Bachelor's of Engineering, Mechatronics, and Robotics with honors and Bachelor's of Science, Mathematical Modeling with honors from Deakin University, Australia. Without any further delay, I would like to hand over the session to you, Mirel.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Richa, and thank you to the team of attendees for joining this session. I hope that I'm coming through loud and clear to discuss this important topic. Now, we will be doing some slideware, so I'll have some slides for you here today. Of course, I'll be sharing, as the title suggests, some information about an interesting topic called operational technology, and it's all around us, and many of us may be familiar with that concept. And I'll be talking a little bit about why it's so important that we emphasize securing our operational technology environments, because that will really give us this technological advancement that we're looking for. When we think about future growth, whether it's within your corporation or whether it's just in the world around us, this will be a very, very critical aspect to that overall growth. It will be an enabler. Now, you've heard a little bit about me. I do sit here in Atlanta, formerly from Australia. I've been with Honeywell for over 12 years, something that's not written here on this slide. In my spare time, I do enjoy hiking. I think that is my #1 savior here during these uncertain times. Just getting out there in the around Georgia, the neighboring states. It's just been a whole heap of fun. So look forward to connecting with you all after this as well. Certainly another one of my favorite pastimes is a good coffee. So I'm always open to a good coffee wherever you are. So let's kick a few things off. And look, to make it a little bit less boring, hopefully you'll be able to see me draw on some of these slides as well, just to keep everyone focused. So we're trying to paint a picture here. What is going on? We have a lot of advancement when it comes to technology. Big data, we've heard of these terms. AI, we know a lot about IoT, these little devices that are connected. We've got 5G ushering in a very, very scalable, flexible, high-speed network to build on all of these different great technologies, right? All of this proliferation of technology is happening all around us. Now, we've been hearing about this for quite some time, and the backbone to all of this, the mesh, if you will, that makes sure that everything is actually scalable, that big data is usable and it's protected, is of course the underpinning notion that everything is secure. We, of course, treat security or treat cybersecurity similar to how we treat our own protection, right? Our own life safety, if you will. You know, when we think about OH&S standards and how they've evolved over the years, I believe that cybersecurity has evolved in a very, very similar type of fashion. And the correlation that I typically like to make is that in OH&S, you try to reduce the risk of incident as far as reasonably practicable. So what does that mean? It means you can never eliminate it to zero. That would be fantastic, right? If we were ever on a work site and we guarantee that there can never be an incident. But unfortunately, that's not the reality of the world. So we can reduce it as far as reasonably practicable. And that is very similar in cybersecurity. There will never be a chance where we have zero, absolute zero chance of these malicious actors on the side here being able to infiltrate our systems, our people, our networks. So really the illustration here is we are growing from a capability standpoint, from a technological standpoint. This mesh of growth is underpinned by cybersecurity. And of course, what we're going to be discussing today, how operational technology, so how the technology that puts together life safety, security, energy management, all of these different things that make up an environment, like a critical infrastructure environment, be it a refinery, be it a hospital, data center, so on and so forth, how we actually protect those environments. And then who are we protecting against? Now, we've heard of a majority of these terms before, no doubt. Whenever we think about a hacker, this person here, we think about someone in a hoodie sitting in a basement doing some nefarious things, but really they come in different shapes and sizes here. We have some people that, of course, we have accidental insiders, some people that, you know, you plug in a USB or you double click on an email and you didn't really know that there's going to be anything malicious, but it opens up a backdoor to that specific threat or hacker trying to get in, right? So this is just to illustrate that not all hackers, not all nefarious actors are one and the same. There are many, many different motivating factors as to why someone would want to disrupt all of this fantastic growth in technology. And the point that we'll be illustrating today is why a good avenue to disruption may be, I certainly don't condone this, but may be via the operational technology environment, and why we need to do a little bit more to keep this environment secure. So we'll certainly be diving into that. But what is OT? I think we've all heard of this term before, but if not, a very, very simplified approach to explaining what OT does is it is the underpinning of all of our systems. Think about it as the systems that do things, control things, monitor things. So if we go into a healthcare facility, if we go into a hospital, for example, this will be your building management system. This will be your security system. Maybe connect up to your nurse call system, your elevators. All of these interconnected devices that make the operations of that facility run. So if you think about a recent incident, for example, like a refinery, right? What makes a refinery operate? Well, we know that now it's a little bit different to what it was back in the old days. We actually have a distributed control system, which is on the operational technology network running our overall system. So when you think about operational technology, think about the systems that are typically automated and typically self-sufficient that run, control, and monitor things. Now, on the other side, we're very, very much familiar with information technology, right? IT. We've been thinking about IT for decades when it comes to cybersecurity. You know, we've been trying to secure, and we still have a long way to go in IT as well, these systems for a very, very long time. And if you run through some of these differences, you would find the differences quite startling. For example, on the OT network, we typically have low bandwidth, right? Because typically the systems are smaller, so in terms of the breadth of the items that we're actually looking at, and we actually want the real-time data. If a control system does not have real-time data, that could be a really, really big problem, right? So when it comes to availability, we don't typically accept any outages on the OT side, whereas on the IT side, we have a different way of dealing with availability, right? One of the things that we typically hear in the IT world is, hey, I've got a problem. Well, have you tried turning it off and on again? That type of concept doesn't translate to OT. We don't go into the OT environment and we don't look at a server that's running our facility and say, well, let's just turn it off and on again. The concepts don't translate. Now, I won't read out all of these, but I think importantly, when we look at the confidentiality, integrity, availability triad, I'm sure we've all seen this CIA triad before, we see that we prioritize availability on the side of OT, followed by integrity. So making sure that the data is available, making sure that the data is actually factually true, that the values that we're getting are consistent with what we should be getting from the actual end device. And then finally, it leads on to confidentiality. Whereas on IT, you can see it's maybe prioritized in a little bit of a different order. We look at confidentiality. I mean, we've seen this through all of the different breaches that we almost see daily. We see confidentiality being breached all the time, right? Passwords being exfiltrated, insider information that shouldn't be released to the public being exfiltrated. So this is a big, big challenge on the IT side. And then we have integrity and availability. So when you think about OT, think about the systems that underpin the operation of any pretty much facility that is around you, even as simple as a hotel. If you're in a hotel, look around, think about what operates the lifts, the lighting, what operates the doors, security to get in, the camera systems. These are all operational technology systems. So then when we look at, well, Mirel, you've been talking about some of these OT risks and IT risks. When you look at what the actual risks are, interestingly enough, where we tend to focus a lot of our energy, and rightfully so, because over the years, this is really where the bad guys have been attacking, right? So they've been trying to get in through this area here, which is the IT side. So what we try to do is secure as much as possible the IT related areas. But what's starting to shift, what's starting to change a little bit is the way these attackers are considering attacking this here. This is the entire OT area. So when we think about IT and OT, think about them as two separate environments. Typically, there is what's called a demilitarized zone, a DMZ, in between the two. And the focus historically for IT teams to protect OT is to test this one pivot point. So when we think about, and the topic of discussion today is of course not penetration testing, but when we think about penetration testing, typically when a penetration test is conducted, we focus on this one pivot point, and if that pivot point is okay, if that specific firewall, next-gen firewall is connected and is actually monitored and is configured correctly, we say no problems. Now, of course, if you look at the iceberg here, that is only one of the specific points of entry. So when we think about OT systems, and all of these different areas of red that you see here is things that we've found during our cybersecurity assessments that we do with some of our clients. But effectively, you think about the different areas of compromise in OT because you have so many different systems, you have so many different areas where things could potentially go bang. And the interesting thing about OT, and I think I've got a slide coming up on this in a few minutes, is that these systems traditionally, if you remember, if you recall, I said 20 plus years of IT-based security. What about OT? So when you think about OT-based security, I would say, in all honesty, less than 5 years. And even that, the application of that has been fairly spotty. So the OT area is becoming a huge area of growth for businesses, which means that they want to connect all of these systems to the cloud. And what happens? If you've got all of these systems that you haven't been taking care of from a cyber standpoint, as an attacker, that is pretty desirable. In my opinion, that's very desirable. Because if you had a choice, if you've got a choice between trying to infiltrate this system, which has quite robust security practices in the most cases, or look at the operational technology system, you may want to pick the OT system, right? And now you as the audience may be thinking, well, okay, well, what can I do on the OT side? I'll get into that in a second, but one of the key drivers to infiltrate the OT network is to find a path through back to IT. So not only is it a somewhat disruptive force on OT on its own, but you can actually laterally and upward move into the IT network areas, which I find fascinating. I mean, I've been studying this area for quite a number of years, and I think that to me is just a fascinating approach. So when you think about IT and OT, think about the differences. Think about the years of security that we've been applying to IT networks. Think about OT and what we're trying to do with OT. We're trying to create more robust systems, get better business outcomes. That requires cloud connectivity, right? And then think about on the OT side, how limited these OT systems are when it comes to security best practice, or even just basic hygiene. And look, it's no real secret, right? When it comes to what can happen, I'm not sure if this is coming through okay, I'm just going to replay it. These things spread like absolute wildfire, right? So this is, I believe, when we look at a few years back, we look at WannaCry. I mean, when there is a certain inflection point in a system and it has access to mobilize and spread at the rate of connectivity today, I mean, we're even more connected than we ever were. We do more in an online capacity than we ever did, right? When you think about the ability for these things to spread and really disrupt networks, disrupt OT critical infrastructure, it can be quite interesting because it is such a huge area of focus in terms of growing from a technology standpoint, but hasn't been given the right level of focus from securing a lot of these OT systems. So why target these OT systems? I mean, we've spoken about this just a little bit. When you think about operational technology, from what we've briefly learned here, well, they have a longer lifespan within IT systems. So what that means is an OT system server, so if you've got a virtualized stack or you've got a bunch of servers in your OT system, they may be there in their current form for more than 5 years. So the refresh cycle of hardware and then the software is lagging tremendously behind IT systems. Now, this is slowly being mitigated and fixed, and the more we look at OT systems, we're putting in these life cycle plans, but we still see out there that OT systems, more often than not, either haven't got the right focus when it comes to refreshing the hardware, or are slowly converging. So that's a big vulnerability, right? If we don't have the right level of support, then of course these systems go without updates, and you can have quite a disastrous event. Now, on the OT side, we also have a lot of legacy systems. So remember, OT, operational technology, think about controllers, think about servers that connect to these controllers. And sometimes the way we think, or in the past, the way we've thought about OT systems are, if it's working, so if that controller, sensor, camera, device is working, well, why bother? Why just leave it, let it work, right? So what ends up happening over time is that these specific systems, these devices, these controllers, they don't get the right level of support. So when you think about areas of compromise, when you think about the firmware of something as simple as a camera, so you look at a camera, it's IP connected, and you think about this camera just being left alone for 5 years. Now, of course, there's going to be vulnerabilities for that old firmware. And if that camera in particular has been discontinued and there is no further updates from the actual business on that camera to fix any potential gaps in or vulnerabilities, that can prove to be a big challenge. So legacy systems, what we want to do there is get on a path to remove legacy systems, or if we cannot remove legacy systems. So think about if you would still be using Windows XP today. I can tell you some people are, and there's a reason for it, right? I'm not saying it's a good reason, but there is a reason. So there is some certain scenarios where there is a reason why someone is using a legacy piece of hardware or software or both, and we need to figure out a way to mitigate that risk. So think again, back to safety, back to personal safety. How do we reduce that risk? If we connect that Windows XP machine to the internet without anything, that is a big risk. How do we drop that right down? So legacy systems are a very big deal. Communication protocols are interesting because when you think about the way things communicate, we typically think, oh yeah, no problems, IP connected. But some of these OT systems have proprietary as well as open or common communication protocols. There's a mix. So there's a mix of ways these systems talk to each other. So these protocols, as you can imagine, weren't specifically designed with a security mindset. So when we think about a potential area of compromise and an area that we can add better protection and security, we think to look at getting off some of the proprietary protocols onto open or common communication standards that have built-in security features. This is one thing that we see all the time. Now, of course, there's always challenges around accounts, account management, passwords for the devices, particularly if they're connected to the internet. I'm sure we all have visited showdown.io before, and we see all these internet connected devices. Look, you definitely don't want to have a common password if your devices are out in the wild, because that would be a big headache for anyone. So that we still see a lot of that because the times are changing, right? A lot of people forget, a lot of people haven't been trained in the right areas that they should be doing these basic hygiene elements. So for us on this call, we may be thinking, well, passwords, least access, least privilege access. You give someone admin if they need admin, otherwise you don't. You give them basic user accounts. This is a fairly common practice in IT, slowly starting to move into OT as well. And then of course we have support of the various systems in OT. Typically support in OT has to do with operations and operational staff. They don't typically have a cyber team looking after OT assets. However, what is starting to happen is we are seeing this convergence between IT and OT teams, which is fantastic. I think that is definitely needed. And what that means is that we are starting to look at augmenting our IT best practices and seeing how they can fit into the OT landscape. And some of you may be thinking, hey, could they just be one-to-one? Could we just copy and paste what we do in IT? Well, if you refer back a few slides to the differences between IT and OT, the unfortunate answer is we can't. It doesn't mean we need to start from the ground up. There are certainly some fantastic IT best practices that we can port over to OT, but it's not a direct copy one-to-one. Now, it goes without saying that compromising OT systems can do a lot of damage. It can do a lot of damage from many, many different aspects. So the picture you see in front of you here, of course, is more of a healthcare facility. So what would you think would happen if a healthcare facility's OT systems go offline? Well, of course, that facility would no longer operate. So if you are in a critical, life-threatening situation and you cannot go to a facility that's operating, that can actually lead to as extreme as a loss of life. And we've seen that recently, I think 3 times now, where there's been a loss of life due to a ransomware attack or due to a threat when it comes to these specific type of systems. But we can take it just a simple, if we give you a simple example, if you're just in a common building, right? And if you were able to, just for fun, right? Because we do have people in those hacking groups that do things just for fun. If you go into and compromise an OT system and you just lock all the doors, and after locking all the doors, you turn on the AC to a high temperature, and then you start to sound an alarm. Now, that may seem like a far-fetched example, but it is a very, very true practiced, when we do some red teaming, blue teaming exercises, very true practice exercise, because it causes a lot of panic, a lot of chaos, if you will, around that specific facility. Now, you can do that in a common building, you can do that in any of the systems that have an OT environment, which of course is many. So you look at a building management system, we definitely want to keep that building management system secure. So from a loss of life, from a practical sense of causing chaos, from a data exfiltration perspective, a lot of critical data, because this is a lifeblood of many companies and how they operate, can sit on that OT environment, or the OT environment can be used to laterally and upwardly move up through to IT channels. So you've got a wide gamut of different areas of damage that can be inflicted in these OT systems. So when we think about some of the questions that I ask almost on a daily basis, when you think about OT systems, when you think about security principles in OT systems, these are the simple questions that we can ask ourselves that when we look around, we can just go, oh, you know what visibility do we have to our OT protocols? Are we using IP everywhere? Do we have serial to IP converter to Ethernet converters? Do we have BACnet, DNP3? What are we using? So how are our OT protocols stacked today, and where do we want to be tomorrow? Just a view of your actual protocols. We typically create a register, which is the right way to go about it. Then think about what you're able to detect. So if I've got 100 assets, actually before that, think about how many assets you have. Do you have a good view of all of the different things that are connected to each other, that are talking to each other, that make up the lifeblood of your overall system? How many do you have? What's talking to what? And am I able to detect an addition, a subtraction, am I able to detect a specific device talking to a device it's never spoken to before, right? All of these network-based elements are critically important on OT systems. Now, of course, that leads us to our OT network as a whole and really thinking about, well, how vulnerable am I, right? So if I look around my OT network and I have 100 assets, now back to that example I gave earlier, if 2 of those assets are running Windows XP, what does that mean in terms of severity? What if those 2 assets running Windows XP are running the most critical part of my operations? Or maybe you want to ask the question, well, why are we still on Windows XP? Why is that end application not working on any other operating systems? Have I chosen the right provider? If that goes offline, what is the impact to my business? What is the impact to my people? What is the impact to my process? And of course, what's the likelihood of that happening? So when we think about vulnerabilities, I don't want everyone to just think, oh, I've got this red traffic light, no go. There's some bad things. There is always going to be something that we find from a vulnerability standpoint. It's really assessing that vulnerability against the specific risk/threat, and of course, likelihood that it is going to occur. And then the most important, the actual impact it has to the end operations, right? So when we think about operations, think about vulnerabilities, think about impact, right? We assess all of these things. And then how are we able to detect specific threats on our operational technology environment? And what does that mean, detect? Does it mean that I'll be able to see someone plugging in a device, be able to see someone laterally moving to another device, trying a specific set of credentials, being denied, trying another machine, right? All of these different areas of detection are important. So when we talk about detection, again, we talk about the different layers of detection that we could potentially have. And then how do you actually integrate all of these different systems together? Now, remember I spoke a little bit about a healthcare facility. You have your BMS system, security system, your lift system, access control system, nurse call. How are these different vendors, suppliers, how are these systems talking together? How are they integrated? We could be doing the most fantastic job here on our BMS system, but if it sits on the same network segment as another system, say a lift system that is not doing as much as they should be on protecting their assets, that poses a risk to the overall network, right? So we think about integration, we think about interconnectivity of systems, we think about security of the environment, not just one system. And then having up-to-date inventory, managing risk, of course, third-party knowledge sharing, understanding priorities, very, very important. And then finally, the governance policies that make up our overall framework and what we actually do if there is an incident. So as a good example that I sometimes like to share, if you do have an incident, it may not be the best thing to quickly respond, remediate, and maybe roll back to a previous backup. And I'll tell you why. Because in the current state that we're in, if that specific, if you didn't have a plan, for example, and you didn't do the quarantining, if you didn't do the forensic analysis, right? What would happen if you lost a few days of system, maybe it's production, and you had specific insurance policies that were tied to compensating you for that lost production? But now you've gone and got rid of all the specific evidence that you had, the forensic data and so on and so forth, to give you bargaining power when it comes to enacting that insurance policy. So this is why it's very, very important to have a plan in place, to have an IR, incident response and readiness plan, to help us quickly respond to these attacks in a controlled manner. So what does that mean? It means we know who to call, we know when they'll respond and how quickly they'll be on site or how quickly they'll be able to access the system. We know what data they're taking off site as per, of course, we have a great framework by NIST on how to respond. And then we know how to do the follow-on steps to ensure that we bolster our security going forward, so we learn from that specific attack. So it's always this life cycle approach of continued learning. So very interesting. I always think about some of these questions. I don't ask them all the time. I don't ask all of them all the time, but some of them make us reflect on these operational technology systems. So a little bit about what we do, just looking down at time, I won't spend too much time on this. Of course, we have our area of focus in what I do is we try to educate our operational technology customers on the need for cybersecurity. So what I do in my standing is we have a specific calling to protect our customers' OT environments. So we've got thousands and thousands of customers that are getting up to speed with the need to do more in OT. So when we think about OT, we think about the products that go into operational technology. They could be a Honeywell product, it could be any product. Those products inherently need to be as secure as reasonably practicable, right? Now, when then we place those products in an environment, we then look at holistically, how do we secure that overall environment? What do we do? Well, a good thing to think about is, well, where do I start? If I don't know where to start, we do some of this, right? We go out there, we do an assessment. We then follow through a lot of the assessment criteria because that builds our overall story when it comes to what we need to protect in a specific OT environment. So very, very important that you know where to start. One of the big fallacies, one of the big challenges, one of the big gripes with some of the market in general is that, hey, I've got this product, you need this product, have this product. Well, that's okay, and that product might be fantastic. However, if you don't understand from a base principle perspective what your environment needs are, what your risk appetite is, your risk profile, how you plan to actually mitigate overall risk through the life cycle of your specific environment, well, you know, I don't know. To me, that product may not be the best thing to do first. So it's always good to understand where and how planning is being done, where and how your stakeholder engagement and combination of IT and OT come in to make the right decisions to then move forward if and when you need a specific product. So I guess from my perspective, we need a good starting point, and a good starting point is to have a plan. So what we do a lot of these days is build plans for our customers, our clients, our partners when it comes to the OT environment, particularly as it relates to data centers, correctional facilities, smart cities, as it relates to all of these building technology environments. And that to me is the core lifeblood of pretty much us, right? The way we function day to day. A lot of what we do, a lot of our remote activity relies on these systems. So some recommendations. I know we've had a short time here together. I want to see if we can get some questions because I think first of all, I love answering questions, and hopefully we're going to get a few of those from the attendees here. But some takeaways. There is a difference between IT and OT. There's a difference in the way those systems are handled from a stakeholder management perspective, so who does the actual work. There's a difference in terms of how policies are enacted. There's a difference in terms of priority that these policies are given to those particular systems. So there is a difference between IT and OT, and hopefully we've learned what that difference is and why it's important for both IT and OT teams to come together, to converge, to have a holistic view across the overall environment. So we don't forget about OT. I think that is rule number one, because on the OT side, as I mentioned a few times now, we're taking these systems, in most times legacy systems, right? that haven't had the best cybersecurity hygiene, and we're pushing them out, right? So we're taking these systems and we're pushing them out to the cloud. Okay, so that's my system. So if we don't secure these systems before doing that, if we don't do some appropriate ICT, appropriate cyber hygiene, before we do that, well, that may not be a positive thing for that specific environment, right? Because it's a good surface for attackers, just due to the sheer amount of vulnerabilities that may exist because not much has been done over the years. So practice good cyber hygiene. Let's start with the fundamentals. The fundamentals will get you very, very far. I mean, it will get you to a point where you would have a very good sleep at night. Let's put it that way. If you just practice the fundamentals. So we always advocate for endpoint protection, disaster recovery, a robust patch management strategy, and not just on paper. The doing is important. Have your patch management strategy here, get all the stakeholders to buy in, but then you've actually got to go and do it over here in the bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever fashion is appropriate to your specific clients or business. And of course, then least privilege access in terms of password management, separation of duties, of separation of constraints, however you want to frame it, when it comes to the actual network design itself. Now, this is a little bit more complex to do in older systems because you have to rejig some of the network segmentation. But if you think about the newer systems that are being installed and commissioned today, think about how we separate. If we look at ISA 99 or the Purdue model, which has been used quite extensively in industrial groups, think about how we do this for other OT systems. So if there's one area that's impacted, why can't we segregate that specific area from impact to the rest of the system? And of course, we talk about this all the time, right? Control of removable media. Think about, yes, it still does happen today, particularly when you got environments that are air-gapped or not connected to the internet /cloud/IT systems. Removable media use is still the main way to get systems updated. So if we do need to use it, remember, we need to reduce the risk. If we cannot eliminate, you reduce. So how do we control removable media? We try to practice this as much as possible, and we've actually built a product just around that specific area of focus. Interestingly enough, something we do see when talking about air gaps, we see some unknown, and we call unknown internet connectivity. Sometimes we stumble upon specific assessments that we do that one area of the OT system, for whatever reason, maybe it was they had internet connectivity when commissioning happened and then someone forgot to turn it off, or they're monitoring and maintaining the system remotely without the client or the customer knowing. Have a look out for unknown internet connectivity. I mean, this sounds maybe a little bit silly, but it is factually correct and does exist. We've seen it many, many times. So this goes back to the questions you ask, right? Do I know my assets? Do I know what's coming in and out? Do I know what's being added, removed? How does that look? Well, if you know all of that, you will certainly know if there is a system that's talking outside of the bounds that you've prescribed. And of course, sessions like this, right, where we raise awareness, where we educate system users. Hopefully, we've got some on this call here today. Where we pass on knowledge. Now, this is a very, very high level, light touch in terms of OT and the differences and why we need OT to be in a good state to propel our technological advancement. Because without OT, look, we won't have any of the great viable solutions that we're talking about in the market today. So raise awareness, raise the importance of doing more with OT. I think that's simple, because it could be a conversation, a remote conversation with a coffee in hand, or in certain areas where we can, around the water cooler, right? This could be just a 5-minute conversation to raise awareness. Hey, I heard a little bit about operational technology, cyber. Do you know anything about it? Check this out, right? So I think that will just snowball. And of course, there are some fantastic best practices out there globally. We all are very familiar with NIST, and there are many of these. We've catalogued about 16 or so that we rely on, that we use, that we actually we comment on and pass back specific feedback to these organizations. But depending on where you are in the world, some are specific, like OzCert, NIST, of course, out of the US, but global, very, very well-renowned. And some others there, ICS Cert, of course, dealing with critical infrastructure systems in particular and certifying those to specific standards on the product side. So very, very important. But just have a look. I mean, by all means, reach out. I will send you some of these. They're very, very good to even to know they exist, to know the topics they talk about. Because if you're looking back and saying, well, how do I implement this? How do I do that? You really don't need to start and enroll your own, right? They've got some fantastic guidelines to help. The base is there. The help can also be added if needed. And then when you think about these OT systems, well, who creates them? Who is supporting them? Who is maintaining them? Well, look, it's folks like us, folks on the Honeywell side, right? As well as our partner network. So we need to, when we raise awareness, when we educate ourselves, we can also pass that back onto our suppliers. We can also pass that back onto our system integrators to say, hey, look, I had this interesting conversation about OT cyber. What are your thoughts? What are you doing about it? Right? How are you managing your firmware updates on your controller or your camera or your control system? How is that happening? Are you doing it at all? These are the good questions that we can tease out from just opening up that conversation. And I think hopefully I can certainly share a lot more here. Hopefully we'll have some more sessions to follow on from this high level one, but I think some great takeaway recommendations to keep secure there and certainly tried and tested. So thank you all for your time. I hope to see some questions come through. By all means, if you have any questions, please ask, but thanks again for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mirel, for such an insightful and informative session. This was a very interesting webinar, and I hope it was worth your time. Before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that this session is in sync with the EC Council products CND and CEH. EC Council CND maps to many roles in the industry like network security engineer, network security administrator, network security analyst, network security architect, operator, etc. Anyone with the CND certification is eligible for 1,35,000 plus job vacancy globally with an average salary of $85,613 per annum. EC Council CH maps to many ethical hacking roles in the industry like security analyst, information security analyst, certified ethical hacking, network management executive. Anyone with CH certification is eligible for 18,000 plus numbers of immediate job openings with an average salary of 90,000 to 1,10,000 per annum dollars. If you're interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll that's going to be conducted now and let us know your preferred mode of training and we'll reach out to you. Now we'll take questions for Mirel. Mirel, the first question we have is kindly explain on how to detect real-time threat detection and OT incident response.
Okay, that's a fantastic question. Thanks for relaying that back to me. So look, I think there are a few layers within that specific question. How to detect, how to do it in real time, and what you do with that once you've actually detected it. So within our specific way, well, we've been, at this for quite some time, right? I've been running this side of our business for 3 years now. So when we think about how we do cybersecurity monitoring, we need to know that, first of all, if you recall, we need to know that is it the right thing to straight away jump to having a product? If the answer is yes, then fantastic. What we would do is we would select the right product from our portfolio we would assess that specific environment, and you would want to make sure that that specific product, in this case, our cybersecurity monitoring suite, would be passively monitoring that overall OT network, right? So one of the critical things about OT security and OT networks in general is that they are they're sometimes very, very funny when it comes to active types of monitoring. They can be very disruptive. So we want to do passive monitoring in real time, and that's typically done off a specific area or focus within your environment. So you could have a backbone pair of switches that a lot of the traffic flows through. We would take that as an analysis point, as well as some others. We would then correlate that to a specific rule engine, which will effectively learn your network over time. Depending on the size of the network, anywhere from 1 week to 2. You then have a blueprint for what the good state of your network is. And then anything outside of that, you would alert on. So remember, you would have a specific passive monitoring device with the right rule sets. And then what you would do is you would make sure that when there is a specific trigger, what happens? And you can do 2 things. It can be an automated response. Now, typically, a lot of the clients that we serve, they don't like automated responses in the OT side, because the OT side of the network, if you stop one thing, could impact another thing, could shut down your system. So typically, automated response is not the first go-to. It happens sometimes, but it's not the first path our customers take or our clients take. So second is building an incident response plan when an alert is triggered. So we call this a triage plan. It's the first step to an incident response. And I can talk about this for hours on end, but effectively the simple structure of it is you get an alert. The alert is not a false positive. Okay, so we already determine that it is something that we subscribe a criticality to. And then once we've got the right criticality, we kick in the incident readiness and response plan. And based on that criticality, we would respond in kind. Now, typically when an incident has occurred, the systems or the areas where an incident has been flagged are typically offline, so we can't remote them. So we would actually go to site to fix these. Now, where this becomes very interesting is, can we proactively determine if an incident is going to occur before it occurs? So the situation I just talked about was when an incident has happened. How do we detect it proactively, right? How do we make sure that we catch it before an incident occurs? So we actually have a deception framework that we use. It's a deception-based technology that does exactly that. So it tricks, in simple language, the attacker into believing that they've compromised the system, but really it's a deception-based system. So it is effectively a reflection of what a real system is, and then we catch that specific threat before any damage has been done. So I hope that answers your question. It's a very deep question, but certainly some simple practical steps. Make sure you're ready for the monitoring. Okay? Step 1, make sure that is what you need. Step 2, once the actual monitoring is in place, how do you calibrate that? Typically 1 to 2 weeks. Step 3, have the right IR plan in place to deal with the right level of response that is needed, and also to eliminate any false positives. And then also use a deception-based framework to actually proactively catch any attacks before you need to respond. So hopefully that's answered the question there. It's a very good one.
Thank you, Mirel. It was really informative. I hope. Okay, the second question we have is from Paishan. In the OT security industry, may I know what top skill does OT security engineer lack in the current market in your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So when it comes to OT has gone through a number of different iterations. Okay, we think about the operational technology landscape. Let me just flick up here. Hopefully everyone can still see my slides. Typically what we would see is we would have engineers doing the implementation of these systems. So we would implement this system that would talk to this system that would talk to an end device. So implementation engineers have been around for a while. And what's growing on the implementation engineering side is the number of systems that we're starting to integrate together. So previously we had systems that were standalone, and then we had another standalone system here. Now, to get better business benefits, we want to integrate them, right? And then what we want to do, we actually want to take those systems out to the cloud as well. So we're going through this digitization process at the moment. So the growth is coming from being and understanding how to integrate the different systems and the different protocols those systems may use, while understanding what you need to do from a, of course, because it comes back down to the customer, right? From a customer value chain perspective. And in my opinion, it's typically driven by doing more with data. So a lot of the influence is going to connecting these systems to the cloud to get better insight into your data, to do more with your OT systems. Now that's on the OT engineering side. Now, a layer that you may want to add to an OT engineer, specifically on the integration side, is cybersecurity, right? So of course, we're talking here with EC Council. So a fantastic start is have a look at CEH, right? So Certified Ethical Hacker. Understand how those concepts that are derived from IT can help you when you're doing your integration on your OT. And then not only understand how that all works, integrate them, ask the right questions. So hopefully that's answered your question. I think it's all about, for me at least, system of systems, moving data, doing more with the data. That typically involves the cloud. If you can piece that together with cybersecurity concepts, make it start with CEH, ask the right questions when you're in the industry, that is a very, very, very good start. Great question.
Thank you, Mirel. Moving on to the next question. This question is from Ivyaz Mamdali. He's the ex-Honeywell. He said, thanks for perfect presentation and information about OT security. What do you think about Purdue model implementation? Is it still can be referred while designing OT environment, or do you think that will be refreshed and new design standards should be introduced?
Thank you for the question, specifically from an ex-team member here. So look, I think the Purdue model, so if you haven't looked this up before, or I say 99, is exactly what we see here. We have different levels. So you'll see L4, L3.5, L3, L2, L1. So what that typically means is you segregate your network into specific layers, and then those layers have what's called conduits. So the connections between those layers, be it a switch, a router, a firewall, right? There's other devices as well, but they're the simple ones. So the Purdue model is still being practiced today and has been popularized by the industrial groups. It is now, only now, after 10 plus years, starting to make its way into building technology systems. So I think we still have some way to go to get these base systems into this Purdue model. And then there could be an iteration going into future, but it's certainly well tested, it's well regarded. If done correctly, it is really, really powerful because it does allow you to segregate and separate out those attacks to specific areas. So anything that aids in doing that is good in my book. So it's a great question, and hopefully I've done it some justice answering it.
Thank you, Mirel, again. Moving on to the next question. It's from Sujesh. Convergence already happens, especially with SCADA system, and what are the best practices for implementing endpoint security solution on SCADA server operator systems and updating them?
Yeah, fantastic question. So we're going to make a big assumption that the specific customer group that you work for or a question that you have, you mentioned convergence has already happened. So what that means is that we've got this in place and that these two teams are talking. Fantastic, that's exactly where we want to be. So when it comes to finding the right solution from an endpoint protection perspective, you want a solution that is non-disruptive, and you want a solution that has low or zero false positives. So you want, and of course, simple to update and maintain, right? That's the third thing. But really what you want is no disruption and low false positive rate. So when we think about how we've thought about this over the number of years, is we have to find the right solution that is top of the market and does those three things, right? So when we think about where we put this specific area of focus, so our endpoint protection sits here. So we have a deep learning endpoint protection provider that we've been partnering with for 4 or 5 years that does this best in class, right? So we actually set about, it took us 6 to 8 months to validate this specific provider and to get our specific needs and wants against 8 or so other competitors. And it took us 6 to 8 months because we have to do rigorous testing on that specific product against all the other products. Then we have to take them and put them in our environments, in OT test simulators. So we have live environments around the world that we test our products on. And it goes through this rigorous testing process. So my recommendation is you too need to do this, go through this testing methodology, right? Because you don't want to have that type of disruption. Or, of course, let me know if you want to know more about what we do and how we've done it, because, of course, everything we do is geared towards the operational technology environments, and we deploy endpoint protection daily for our customers. So it's a great question. Certainly very, it can get very involved if you do the process properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirel. We'll take second last question. How is the OT systems and devices managed in aircraft? What are the applicable security standards and control? It's been asked by Altunde.
Wow, that's another good question here. Look, when you think about aircraft, I mean, we've got two different areas. When we think about aerospace in general, we've got the air side and the land side. So land side is anything that is not the actual aircraft itself. So we support those systems end to end. When you look at an aircraft, they are more specialized systems. So we have a special group within our business that just deals with aircraft. And, without sharing too much information, those systems are highly specialized and they require a special type of skill set, but they also require all of the specific vendors that provide communication systems, whatever technology systems in that aircraft to work together. So maybe that's a longer discussion that we can potentially have, but just know that it's a specialized environment that doesn't look like the systems that I showed you here. So it's not a system that looks like this. It looks a little bit different in terms of how it's specifically segregated and then what talks to what and what is allowed to talk to what. But it's a great question because certainly even those systems, with the more technology that's coming into play, especially now we even have internet connectivity on flights, can be susceptible to compromise down the line. But of course, you want to have the smartest people working on the toughest problems, and that's, I believe, what we have. So that's a good question.
We'll take the last question. Thank you so much, Mirel. The last question is how to implement ZTA.
I'm sorry, ask that again.
Yes, the question is how to implement ZTA, Zero Trust Architecture.
Another big topic. Look, we need to define zero trust, right? So zero trust on the base of it is that, well, it's as the name implies, right? So when we think about the word architecture, we already have made an assumption that we understand what zero trust is. So for me, zero trust is a conversation that needs to be had to get all stakeholders to buy in before you even start thinking about any architecture implementation. Because it can be as simple as having least privilege access and having very strong control mechanisms on individual access on the OT network for a system, or it can be very, very wide reaching. And we've seen implementations of both, but certainly zero trust is a new, it's not a new concept, it's just it's kind of being taken in a new go-to-market way. But I would suggest that if we're even considering implementing zero trust, this is a deep conversation that needs to be had, and we help put together these plans before it goes through to implementation. Because for different customers, it means different things, and of course, different levels of security and protection that you can get. But another very big topic and another exciting topic to discuss potentially at some point in the future as well.
Thank you again to our wonderful speaker, Mirel, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and knowledge shared to our global audience. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we're really looking for more and more sessions with you. Before we conclude, Mirel, would you like to give a message to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, just thank you everyone for your time, for taking time out of your day to learn something new, I hope. You know, this is just one step, one very small step on the journey to growth here, whether that's personal growth, whether that is growth for your business, or whether that's growth if you are actually implementing and supporting OT systems. So I want to thank you. I do hope that you have learned something today, albeit it was very brief in our discussion because cyber is a very wide-reaching topic. And please do reach out, add me on LinkedIn, of course, send me a message and be happy to continue the conversation at any point in time. And of course, thanks to the great EC Council team as well for the support here today.
Thank you, Mirel, for your kind words. And before we conclude, thank you all the attendees who have joined the webinar and took time to be a part of Cyber Talk series and took part in the poll. And with this, we will end the session. You all may disconnect the line. Thank you, Mirel. Pleasure to have you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.